Okay. Well, like if I'm already having to swallow the idea of like, okay, I'm gonna yeah, that's a fun, but that I'm going to like have to eat another person. Like, I don't know. I'm starting with the butt or something, right? Like something that's the most similar to like
You put some thought
pork.
into this.
Haven't we all though?
No. I will be tonight, though, I'm sure. Yeah.
It's a discussion to be had.
But yeah, 2 a.m. tomorrow morning, I will be.
I'm Paige.
And I'm Megan.
And this is Spooky Science Sisters. Hello, you're listening to Spooky Science Sisters, a podcast where we present to you a science-based and probably very giggly discussion on all things strange and unusual.
In this Thanksgiving-themed episode, we're going to tell you about one of the greatest mysteries surrounding some of the original colonists in what is now the United States, the Lost Colony of Roanoke. To do that, we're joined by a couple of special guests. Our first is Sarah, who is a professor of archaeology and anthropology, and she is a host from the Archaeological Fantasies podcast. And our second is Karen, who is a linguist, an author, and a host on the Monster Talk podcast. So, I guess, Sarah, if you want to say hello and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, I am not a professor.
I was looking at your Twitter profile.
Yes, I am a professor at Miskatonic University, which is not a real place.
Oh,
that's a Lovecraft reference.
Damn it!
It's okay. It's funny. Yes. I am.
Well, yeah. Clearly, my 30 seconds of research was not great ahead of time.
I wonder how many other people think I'm a real professor at Miskatonic University. That's
just let them think it.
Yeah, right. That's fabulous. I am a professional archaeologist. I do CRM archaeology, which is contract archaeology. I'm not going to bore people with what that is, but I've worked in the field for almost 20 years now. I specialize in historical and prehistoric archaeology in North America, which is a very important distinction to make. And I focus my spare time on debunking pseudo-archaeology and aliens and giants. And I have recently, with Karen for the most part, actually, she comes on my show quite a bit now.
Yes.
My paranormal archaeology blog and podcast, where I look at the paranormal through an archaeological lens and try to figure out why people think certain things are paranormal and how that changes their interactions with things and locations once they've decided that they are haunted or spooky or special.
Yeah, totally. Well, yeah, and that's like right up our alley. So I'm so glad that you suggested that we all do this together. And I was just listening to one of the Skinwalker Ranch episodes that you did.
Oh, yes.
Which we did a 2-part series on that earlier. And yeah, it was incredibly frustrating. So it was really hilarious to listen to your take on it.
Was that one of the podcasts with Bill? Because I'm not sure if I've picked Karen's brain totally with the Skinwalker Ranch yet.
Well, we did one episode too.
Yeah.
With Monster Talk. That was the live one. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
The live. That was fun, actually.
It was.
Yeah. It was really funny. And like, especially, Paige, you'll appreciate this. The description of Brandon Fugel from like the early episodes as like they portray him as if he's like some sort of Bond villain. And I was like, that is exactly right.
Oh. Mr. No or something. But anyway.
Yeah, it's so bizarre. Okay, anyway. That aside, Karen, do you want to introduce yourself and say a little bit about yourself too?
Yeah, so I'm not a professor either. I am a doctor, for what it's worth, but not the kind that can take your gallbladder out or anything like that. Just a linguist. So I work with, linguistics does come from anthropology, and but I work in semantics, which is with meaning and language. So that's not really why I'm here tonight. I have a background doing research. I mean, I'm somewhat known as a skeptic, and I've done. Well, I think I've distanced myself a little bit from the movement nowadays, but
that's fair. That's fair.
Certainly, be people who would know me as a skeptic because I'm a host of Monster Talk with Blake Smith. So that's the science show about monsters, and we talk about cryptids and legendary creatures and all kinds of fun things. And we talk about whatever we want to talk about nowadays. So we also discuss ghosts and psychics and just anything paranormal, supernatural. And if I can also mention a book that I just released.
Yes.
Just to plug that, it's called On the Offensive, and it's about prejudice in language, past and present. And so it looks at racism and sexism and stuff. Again, it's not relevant to this show tonight, but I just wanted to get that in there.
Yeah. No, that's amazing.
I would like to toot Karen's horn for her.
Thank you.
She is part of the field of archaeology, which is why I wanted her to jump in on this with us. Also, she and her husband do a lot of really interesting paranormal investigation. And Karen has also written another book, which was Haunted America, which is kind of relevant because she went and looked at a bunch of kind of famously haunted locations and looked at them through a skeptical lens. And Karen is a bit of a legend in the skeptics community, and whether she chooses to associate with it or not.
Thank you. Yeah. I love you.
I want people to know who you are. God damn it.
That's amazing. That. Yeah. We did a recent episode where we actually had Kenny Biddle on as a guest. Did like debunking stories about famous haunted locations. So sounds very similar to your book. So we're gonna have to read that for a future episode. So that's really awesome. And Paige can tell you like the number of times that I've talked about Monster Talk on this podcast is a lot.
It's a good podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, we've been doing it for 10 years now. It's been around for a while.
It feels like it's been probably the last 5 or 6 episodes.
Yes.
You've mentioned Monster Talk. So
thank you.
I'm maybe a little bit obsessed. And now after hearing both of your intros to this podcast, I'm like, wow, I'm very intimidated.
Oh no, we're really strange.
I'm thinking weird. Maybe I'll jump off and just let you three handle it.
Absolutely not, because I don't know as much as you guys do about tonight's topic. So,
well, I would argue that we don't really know much either, but
maybe no one does.
Good, because I can talk for hours about this. So let's
perfect.
do
Someone
this.
can.
That is excellent. Okay. So I'm just going to try to, I guess as quickly as possible, go through a little bit of background about the Roanoke colony and how it was established and all that. And feel free, anybody, to hop in at any point with questions or comments, or if I say anything that's, blatantly wrong. But which is very possible. Okay. But the idea here is that we're hopefully going to be able to focus more time of this episode on the possible explanations of what happened to the Roanoke colonists and, think a little bit about the scientific or archaeological methods that you would use or apply towards figuring that out. So again, trying to keep it a little bit more brief on the background. But I just want to plug, if you want a really detailed history, the Astonishing Legends podcast did a 2-part series on it just this past March, I think. And the Unexplained Mysteries podcast did a 2-part series on it. And those, they do like a ton of background detail about everything. And yeah, like there's a lot to unpack here. Like
Yeah.
it's all sort of a mess because there's a ton of like political factors at play with what's happening in England and Europe at this time, and just like some serious blunders and craziness that happened obviously with the Native American population. So there's a lot of stuff here.
Megan?
Yes.
I'm going to cut you off really fast. And I know that you're already getting very excited about the topic, but we forgot about something spooky.
Oh my God, I totally forgot about something spooky.
So we can come back, but it's very important that we do the spooky at some point. I was excited about Karen's story.
I was so excited, and then I just totally forgot.
We can do the spooky thing because Karen's got fabulous stories, and I want to hear what this thing is.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to hear how you normally do this part. So how about someone else starts and then I'll tell my story. It's just quick.
Paige, I've totally lost my mind today, clearly. I'm sorry, you guys.
Megan, do you have something spooky that's happened to you in the last couple of weeks?
Apparently she lost her mind. I mean, that's pretty terrifying.
Yeah, it's creeping me out a little bit how much my brain apparently doesn't function anymore. So that's not great. No, so the only thing that I would put in the spooky category, and right now my dog is staring at me from the top of the stairs and crying, so I apologize if you hear that. But so I have some lights that I had strung around our railing leading up our stairs, and I think a couple episodes ago I had like been a little bit weirded out by them because I kept finding them turned on by themselves, and like thought maybe I'd activated some sort of timer thing, and I was like, oh, that's really weird, or there's like faulty wiring or something like that. But I figured it out, or I should say that my husband Steve figured it out, because one morning I woke up and he said, oh, did you know that the Apple remote is on the same frequency as your lights, so it turns them on? You activate the Apple remote, which is funny, and like, but yeah, he realized it because he was downstairs watching TV one night, and then all of a sudden they started flashing, and it's because they're on the same frequency as the Apple remote. So it was not so spooky after all. Yes.
Is that Georgie in the background?
Yes, that's Georgie crying incessantly.
What kind of dog is he?
He's like a Shih Tzu mix, and Shih Tzus were bred to be lap dogs, and Georgie 100% lives up to that. Like, it is his life's purpose to be on your body as much as possible.
It's to keep the fleas off of you.
Yeah. So when he cannot, it's a very sad day. Anyway, so other than that, it was cool to get an explanation for that. But then also, Paige and I have been playing the video game called Phasmophobia, which is an early release game, but it's you're ghost hunters. You get sent out on jobs to figure out what type of ghost is at the location that you're at, and it's very spooky.
And it uses all of the cool equipment that we've talked about in our previous episodes.
Yes.
It's so much fun.
Yeah. So like you get to use the EMF and the spirit box and all of these insane gadgets. Yeah, we have a lot of thoughts about that. But you get to use that and yeah. And what we've learned so far is that Paige and I are terrible ghost hunters. Like, we read an article on it that said, oh, dying is relatively rare in the game, and it was like, so it was 4 of us playing together, and I think like at least one of us, but typically more, has died on every single investigation that we've done.
When that game is in the general release, I want you and Matt to play that.
I think I'll have to, yeah. But I'd have to
Yeah.
add to that everyone who is a ghost hunter is pretty bad at ghost hunting.
Fair. Absolutely fair.
Yes. Is there such a thing as good at ghost hunting?
Probably
Well,
not.
there's
No.
people that make a living at it, so I
Yes.
guess
The
that
People doing a better job than me.
qualifies.
That's
Well,
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess.
Yeah. Put that way.
Okay. Okay. So, Paige, did you have anything else specifically spooky that you wanted to talk about?
Nope. The ghosts have left me. It's boring here now. I mean, Phasmophobia has been great, and I'll say that it has totally creeped me out several nights, but really that's it. Nothing else exciting's going on over here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'll tell my story then.
Yes.
Yes, please.
So I don't know about you guys, but I don't really answer the phone anymore when it rings. I mean, I'm still getting over the election, and I go by many names. I go by Karen, but also apparently by Rebecca and Steve and Dave, who previously owned my phone. So I get text messages for these people.
Wow.
And I get phone calls for them to this day. So I tend to not answer the phone. And I think a lot of people are like that nowadays.
Yes.
And it's going to be a telemarketer, or it's going to be a robocall or something like that. So anyway, yesterday I just sat down and I was about to start researching the topic for our show. And I got a phone call and I didn't recognize the number. So I thought, I'm on my computer. I'm just going to look up the prefix and the number and see if I should pick it up, if it's someone I recognize or not. And so I looked up the number and it came from Roanoke.
Oh.
And I've
like
never
that.
really, I was just like landed in my lap, and my husband was here at the time too. And I was like, this is just perfect for Spooky Science Sisters, because I'd never really thought of Roanoke, and I've heard of the story of the Lost Colony, but I didn't know too much about it. You know, you guys probably heard about it in school, and growing up in Australia, it's not something that we learned about.
Yeah.
So just to get that phone call at that time from Roanoke was just a really cool coincidence.
Yeah.
That's
That's
bizarre.
a really weird.
That's my story.
That's a
I
really,
like that one.
And
That's
a good
one.
segue. Good segue.
Yeah,
You
that's
win for
crazy.
spookiest story.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's a good one.
Yeah. I mean, that's like legitimately a spooky coincidence. That's
It
weird.
really is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I still
Yeah.
don't know who it was, but maybe they were calling for Steve or
I
Dave.
was like, did you pick a phone up at that point and you're like, tell me everything you know about Roanoke?
Well, I did. It was associated with a name, and I've forgotten the name. I probably shouldn't mention it anyway. But you know, who knows? It could still have been a robocall. But they didn't leave a message, so it was just a missed call. So it's a mystery.
Ooh, it was the Lost Colony calling to tell you where they were.
Yes,
It totally could be.
Like, damn it, our last hope. Call Karen, Rebecca, Steve, Dave, and ask them how to get home.
Okay, yeah, Sarah, did anything spooky happen to you recently?
No. I was trying to think of like, dude, I don't really have anything spooky. No, sorry. I can't even I can't even make something up on the spot. That's how boring my few days have been here.
Well, mine too, if it makes you feel any better.
It does actually. We're all at the point now that we're okay. So spooky for you. We've moved from code green to code red in Philly because that's spooky.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I brought everybody down. My bad. Back to Karen's story. Roanoke phone call.
Yeah. Okay, so now we can actually do Roanoke background because I haven't completely skipped an entire part of our podcast. I might just leave it that way when I edit it. It's fine. Okay, so yes, where we left off, we're hoping to focus more on the methods of figuring out what happened or the theories of what might have happened to these colonists. So now we can do a little bit of background, and you can hear my toddler now shrieking upstairs. It's fine. We've got a whole crew here. Okay, so one of the quotes that I loved. So I read this book by Andrew Lawler and called Secret Token, and he has a quote in there from a historian named Adrian Masters, who says that Roanoke is the Area 51 of colonial history. So I was like,
Karen.
I said, that makes me so happy that we're doing it for this episode.
I was just like, oh, these names.
Yeah. Oh, like you know who those people are, you're saying?
I'm sorry, you told him a what?
And Adrian Masters, he said that he was a historian.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I mean, how people want to identify themselves.
Okay. Incredible. Anyway. Okay. So the colony gets established through a charter that's obtained by Sir Walter Raleigh, who was apparently quite the favorite of Queen Elizabeth. And she liked him so much, though, that she didn't want him to go off traveling places, at least at this time, because eventually, things don't go great for him. But they're looking to establish a foothold in the New World, in what is now the United States. Particularly want to get ahead of the Spanish. They're looking for gold or mineral resources. They're also looking for an easy passage to the Pacific Ocean and access to China. And I guess one of the original explorers suggested that North America was basically pinched in the middle, so there was like some sort of Panama Canal situation, like right on the other side of
They had a lot of really interesting ideas of what the American continent. Well, and I'm not slamming people. Like, they had interesting ideas about what it looked like because it had never been explored.
Right.
So I mean, these things aren't. They're strange to us today, but they weren't strange at the time.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and they said so the Roanoke and what's the Outer Banks now are barrier islands, and then there's basically a large, I think it's like I think I'd read that it was like world's largest or one of the largest lagoons, essentially. And it wouldn't have been totally weird for them to mistake that as like, oh, that's the Pacific Ocean on the other side. So they thought that it was really narrow and they could get to the Pacific Ocean and therefore to China easier through there.
And then, of course, you had Columbus thinking that America was the Indies and China. Lots of different ideas in those days.
Yeah, and by this time, Spain had quite the foothold in the Caribbean and Florida, and so there was all sorts of political tension associated with that as well. So there's a lot going on. But anyway, they do an exploratory trip in 1584, and the guys that go on that suggest that Roanoke would be a great place for a fort or a settlement, basically to put this new colonization attempt. Unfortunately, it sort of sounded like there was a lot of exaggeration and some tall tales at play here because, people wanted to make sure they got the approval of the Queen and also the funding in order to make the journey and set up the colony. And I guess Raleigh had some sort of deadline imposed on him to establish a colony before his charter expired. And, then he wouldn't be able to reap whatever financial benefit there was there. So a year after that, they do their first colonization attempt at Roanoke. And this is in 1585, and it's a more, I guess, military-minded one. So it's led by Sir Richard Grenville, and Colonel Ralph Lane is his second in command. And they establish an all-male fort/colony at Roanoke, which like already I can tell you is a bad idea.
Yeah.
But it's a disaster. They start out low on supplies because they have mishaps with losing supplies as they're getting there. There's serious conflict with the Native American population, some of which was perpetrated by Grenville before he headed back to England. So he goes back to England at the end of the summer. He leaves Lane in charge. By the time it's the next year, a guy named Francis Drake, who's like rolling through after pirating his way around the Caribbean to give the Spanish a hard time, rolls up to Roanoke. And they're like, get us the fuck out of here because this is a nightmare. And by this time, Ralph Lane has like assassinated the chief of a local tribe. So like things were just, they were very bad. And so most of the men from this colonization trip head back to England with Francis Drake, and they leave a group of 15 behind them. And fun fact is that apparently it's while Drake is in the Caribbean, they gave him like this rum lime mint concoction, which he brings back to England, and like that's what becomes the mojito that we know today. So I was like,
Did they put it in a coconut?
yeah.
And shake it all up?
Yeah. But anyway, so that becomes the mojito. I liked it.
Yeah.
And that's fun. And apparently too, which is funny that we talked about Skinwalker Ranch, because they call him Ladraque, I think, or Ladrake. It's, I don't know, it sounds similar to as Draque, but that means the dragon. And obviously there's dragon on Skinwalker Ranch who was
No dig dragon. No dig dragon. I don't dig. You're not allowed to dig. Dragon will make sure that you do not.
Yeah, dragon would not be a good archaeologist.
Dragon doesn't want you disturbing whatever it is that's haunting or possessing or hovering 5 miles above,
Right.
invisibly in the air, undetectably.
Right.
Poor dragon.
Poor dragon. We've given him a very hard time.
Okay, I know this is completely off topic, but yes,
You're
poor
fine.
dragon. He seems like, I've heard him on a couple podcasts now. I've seen a couple interviews that he's given. He seems like a really nice guy, like a
really?
very normal person. I think he just gets edited in a way that just
Okay.
is not as flattering to him.
Okay.
But then again,
That
he's
makes
also
me-
on a show called Skinwalker Ranch. So, I mean, half of this is
I was like-
self-inflicted.
He gets
Yes.
pretty worked
Yeah.
up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Either way, that makes me feel a little worse about how mean we've been to Dragon, but only a little bit.
Don't be mean to Dragon. Be mean to God, what's his name? The lead
Travis.
physicist, Travis. Yeah, be mean to him.
We were also quite mean to him. So
Yeah.
Equally mean.
Okay.
We got a lot of mean to go around.
Yeah.
Okay. So things, have not gone great. Most of these people head back to England, and now we get to the actual colonization attempt that we'll focus on, which is a group of 115 essentially middle-class men, women, and children who are going on this mission. It sounded like, because they were interested in owning more land, they were looking to increase their station in life or just have a better life, right? So they are led by John White, who was had been an artist that was taken along on an earlier expedition, and this is in 1587. Among the colonists were his only daughter, who, when they started the journey over to Roanoke, was 3 months pregnant. So, like, that sounds terrible. Like, the last thing you want to do
Yeah.
while pregnant is
Second
spend
trimester's not so bad though.
Yes, but like still.
Yeah,
I
being
feel
on a
like,
boat.
yeah, let's climb on a
Oof,
boat for
morning
however many
sickness.
months.
Yeah.
Yes, but her name is Eleanor White Dare. And she gives birth to Virginia Dare, who's the first English person to be born in what is now the United States.
Mhm.
So this expedition, they were actually supposed to settle about 50 miles away along the Chesapeake Bay, closer to where the Jamestown settlement ended up being. Given that they had known from this earlier expedition that the conditions at Roanoke weren't that great for a colony, and now they had all these hostile Native American populations that were around it. But I guess for like an unknown reason, Fernandez, who's the pilot or the captain of the ships that takes them out there, he like essentially maroons them, it seems like he's like, no, I'm not gonna take you guys to the other location. Like they stop there to check on the Roanoke colony and to like check on these 15 men that are supposed to be waiting for them, and he's like, no, I'm not taking you any further. And John White says, like, he just seems like he sort of just like goes along with it and is like, well, okay. So anyway, like there are, I guess, some complicating factors, like Fernandez and White didn't like each other very much and like had some disagreements, but it was my understanding that like they didn't really know why. They just sort of leave them on Roanoke when that's not where they're supposed to be. So they get to this fort and they find, what they come across is like, well, none of the 15 men that were left behind by Lane are there anymore. They come across a skeleton of a soldier who has like long been dead and was killed by Native Americans. The fort had been dismantled and the 15 men were gone. And they were driven out essentially by the Native Americans, and they skedaddled somewhere. So I think by this time the colonists are sort of freaking out a little bit, and they, at their request, John White ends up actually leaving with Fernandez to go back to England to bring them back more supplies. But because of sort of impending war with Spain, he doesn't end up being able to get back there for 3 years. So
Yeah, I
there
love
for a
that
while.
gap. I'm just like, why did you bother at that point?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he was hoping he was coming back to a good situation, but yeah, it
I don't know why he thought he was, because he didn't leave a good situation. He's just like, oh, you know.
True.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like they knew that, yeah, it's like, oh, all the people who were here before got murdered by Native Americans, but like this is going to be fine.
Yeah.
Yes. So he finally gets back, and by the time they get to Roanoke, they actually have to make a couple attempts to get to shore because of bad weather. So like it's during hurricane season essentially that they've gotten here, and I guess it's just a particularly tricky area to navigate via ship. And so during one of these attempts 7 men end up flipping their boat and drowning. So like that's not great for morale. They see smoke and evidence of fire burning on the island, which like they initially think are like, oh, the colonists know that we're here. They're like sending up some sort of signal. But as we all know, that turns out to not be the case. So they finally get to shore. And in the end, like only end up spending, I guess, a few hours there, like long enough to determine that the fort had been abandoned, but there were no signs of distress. Most of the useful items had been removed, and the personal belongings that White had left behind, like he specifically mentions that those were looted. The fort was overgrown with weeds and vines. The houses that had been that they had built had been taken down, and there was some evidence that they had like fortified the area to protect them. So like they were expecting some sort of attack to have happened, but this is like it had been long since abandoned, and the only evidence of that the colonists had left behind was there were two messages. So one that was carved into a tree that said crow, so just CRO. And then the other, which is on a post within the fort that says Croatoan. So White takes this as a quote unquote secret token. So that he had told them, like, hey, if you guys leave while I'm gone, leave me a message and let me know where you've
Put
gone.
a post-it on the fridge.
Right.
Be
And
sure to check in. Be back by 8.
yes. And if you're under distress, you should carve this, I guess what they call a Greek cross. So some sort of 4-pointed cross symbol. So there's not that. There's just this word Croatoan. And I mean, I guess like I would, White sort of like accepts this as at face value, gets back to the ship and is like, oh, okay, well, they went to Croatoan, which is the name of a tribe, and it's also the name of a nearby island that they lived on, a Native American tribe.
So the thing with Croatoan, and which is called Cape Hatteras in North Carolina.
Yes.
The settlers had stopped there prior, and they had developed relationships, a friendly relationship with the Croatoans there.
Yes.
So for that, so this is, I assume you're getting to this point. I apologize for cutting you off so early.
Oh,
but
you're fine. You're fine.
The major reason that we historically and archaeologically believe that is where the Roanoke colony went, was back to Croatoan, is because of the friendly relations and also these messages that were left, because why else would you leave that message?
That's my question.
I mean, it's
right.
It's not rocket science.
What I'm wondering is, I mean, how was this reported that Crow and Croatoan were carved into the fence post and the tree? What's happened to this evidence over the years? I mean, do we know for a fact that these messages were definitely left?
So that's another thing I wanted to hit on, is the accuracy of historical documents can at best be questionable, especially the
Sure.
further back in time you go.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not being mean. I mean, it's just,
it's true.
No, it's true.
Yeah, it's true. And things get blown out of proportion. Someone screws up and they're the only person around. So sure, let's write about how I'm not the screw up for this. And it's someone else's fault. Totally. I mean, these things occur. I'm not saying that's exactly what happened here, but there's no reason to not believe that the Croatoan and the Crow were carved there. There's no reason not to believe that the settlers didn't return to an area that was friendly and well stocked, because that's the other part of the Cape there is it's a safer area to live in. It's a more fertile area to live in. It was a better spot to colonize. And as much as I like to give European colonists crap, they weren't complete idiots.
All the time.
Yeah, I mean, they had their moments.
Yeah.
And when you start dying of starvation and the weather starts getting nasty and your only hope is a group of people who have lived here a lot longer than you and seem to be doing fine, you're probably going to go hang out with your friends until you can at least get your feet back under yourself. So
that was exactly my impression. Like I heard, they're like, oh, they left this note, Croatoan, and we know that they were friendly with them. So it's like, well, okay, case closed.
Also, well, and also keep in mind, it's from the time that they left till the time that they were discovered could have been as long as 3 years. Like, stuff could have gone south almost immediately. I mean, they weren't in a good position to begin with when White went back to go get more supplies, because that's why they sent him, because they were doing so poorly adapting to their new surroundings. They were like, we can't survive. Go get us some more tea. And so White was like, yeah, man,
and
hang
cucumber
on.
sandwiches.
Right, exactly. And then decided to take the long way around and was gone for 3 years. And I mean, they know how long that trip should have taken. So I would assume after 9 months, they were probably like, okay, we're screwed.
Yes.
What's the plan B?
Yes.
And the plan B was to backtrack.
How long should they have been if it wasn't for the war between England
I think
and
he
Spain?
should have been back within the year.
Yeah, because it's what, a 3-month trip from point A to point B, and then you like consider some time to pull stuff together and get it loaded and then come back. I mean, they probably were a fast turnaround would have been 9 months, but yeah, he should have been back within the year.
Right.
Not
Certainly
3
not
years
3
later.
years.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like sort of so he initially says like, oh, okay, cool. Well, we'll go down to Croatoan and try to find them, see where they are. And unfortunately, because the weather is so bad, one of the anchor lines on the ships that he's on, or the ship that he was on that was supposed to go there, breaks. And so it's too dangerous for them to try and make the trip down to Croatoan. So they decide they're actually going to, I guess, try to make it down to the Caribbean and spend the winter down there, repair, restock, and then head back up to the Roanoke colony. But it's like just disaster after disaster, because while they're down there, they get blown off course and they basically just like end up going back to England, and then he can never get it together again financially to make it back. And it's like, I mean, it's a
And he
sad
dies in a few
story.
years, doesn't he? 3 years later, I think he died.
Oh, does he? Oh, I don't know.
After getting back to England. But it just makes you wonder how he felt that he left his daughter and granddaughter behind and made all of these promises. And it just seems like he didn't have much power in all of his negotiations with these ships and the captains.
Yeah. Well, and there's the weirdness between him and Fernandez and all that stuff. So,
yeah, I mean, I feel sorry for that guy. I really do. Because that's going to suck. But the important thing to take away from this story is that it was never verified where the settlers went.
Yes.
One way or the other.
He leaves without actually finding out.
Without ever knowing,
that they've gone there. So it's like, well, that's like mistake number one. Sure, it seems pretty obvious that they've done this, but nobody actually checked. Okay. So now we can start thinking about, okay, what happened to these people beyond the very obvious answer of they went to live with the Native Americans and that was that.
Wait, so we don't want the obvious answer?
Well, no, I'm fine with the obvious answer, but we're gonna talk about the other possibilities.
Case closed, man. We are done.
We're done. We're done with this episode.
Time to go out of
here. That's what I thought when I first started researching this. I thought, oh yeah, we're done here now, and then you start hearing about aliens and things like that, and it's like, okay, there's a lot of other theories out here. So I'm assuming we're going to go through all of them.
Oh yeah, we'll
or at least some of them, maybe not all.
Or
at
least touch on some of the silly ones. So nobody bothers to check, so we don't know for sure what happened to them, and it's complicated figuring it out now by a couple of factors, which I'm sure Sarah, you can shed some light on. But as far as I know, and Karen, you were asking like what's left of the fort today or the settlement today, and it's like pretty much nothing from what I understand. Like they don't actually know exactly where it was located. And the exact location of it wasn't marked on any 16th century maps. There are no drawings in existence of the town. So like they don't really know exactly what they're looking for. They have found very few artifacts. So like relative to other archaeological sites, you know, even if they were picked over by local Native Americans after the settlers left, or the colonists left, like there should be at least a significant amount of garbage left behind. But like nobody's found that. And then, you know, much to I'm sure many archaeologists' dismay, it sounds like what was remaining of the fort like sort of got destroyed over time, like picked over by sort of amateur treasure hunters. Parts of it were potentially bulldozed, like they were paving roads and stuff in the area. So so it's like they don't even really know where it even is. So that makes it more difficult too.
Fun stories about archaeology. We're good at this. We know what we're doing. Digging up places that don't exist anymore is kind of our shtick. It is true that we don't know where the exact location of the Roanoke colony may have been. We have some ideas based on old maps and just in general on survey. I know that there's this article recently, which I have feelings about, that was put out. I'm scrolling up so I can read it. Art News Net, which is where I always go for my archaeological.
Very scholarly, yeah.
Yeah. But they are talking about the Jamestown archaeological projects there, and they are talking with people from the Jamestown group there. So the people they're talking to, at least, are legit. But there is the idea, there has been a location that has been found that is possibly, I'm using my good words today, a pre-Jamestown location settlement. There's evidence of food storage vessels that were for long-term food storage. There's quite a bit of historical ceramics, so like plates and bowls, that kind of stuff that's being found there. Apparently there's been some metal pieces that have been left behind, like a rapier handle, and it looked like some gun pieces. So they have found a location that is in the area where we expect the Roanoke Island or the Roanoke colony to be. And the reason that they're not associating it with Jamestown, because it's not terribly far from, is because of a lack of certain artifacts that they would expect to see. Mainly pipe stems, which is interesting to me, that like apparently Jamestown people really liked to smoke.
Yeah, I read that too.
Yeah, so not finding. Now, I do have a few issues with these two excavations, but I don't know if you guys really want me to go into that one too much.
I mean, we're here for it. We're here for the the science.
Well, it's without a complete report. You say the science. Without a complete report, I can't make like a definitive yes, no comment on it. But it does sound a little preemptive to declare the location Roanoke, which is what they're doing in the article that I shared with you guys. So they're just like, one group is straight up saying, we've found Roanoke. And you found a site that apparently predates or is not associated with Jamestown. That doesn't mean you found Roanoke. It does mean that you found something that may not be associated with Jamestown, which in its own right is very interesting. I mean, I'm all about the historical archaeology. Just from the article and reading, it sounds like they did a really good. They did a job. They did their job. There's nothing here where I'm like, I got a bunch of people out there with metal detectors and dowsing rods.
K2 meters and
right, exactly. I'm not trying to use their ghost box to get to talk to the spirits of the dead.
Sure.
Marjorie, is that you?
That wouldn't have been a good way for them to figure this out.
I did an entire episode on psychic archaeology, and I'm pretty sure Karen and Blake have talked about psychic archaeology.
We have, yeah.
There was like a small portion in Andrew Lawler's book where like he talked about like some sort of psychic or something coming in and being like, I sense that there was a building with like 25 people here or something like that. So when they were trying to go over the site,
hot reading.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I had read that article that you had sent over, and I sent it to Paige as well. And yeah, it was just one of those things where reading it, I was like, this has got to be. So I am I have a PhD in geochemistry, and my PhD focused on volcanology. And so it's like when you tell people, oh, I specialized in volcanoes, like their first thing is like, oh, did you know that Yellowstone is a volcano? It's like, yes.
I
Caldera.
love that we all have that question. Like every
Yeah.
field has that question, and that question that just makes you go, oh.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, you know, don't get me wrong. I love to talk about volcanoes. I love when people are interested. That's fine. But it's like, it's very much that article. There was just some of it. And like, especially the headline that read exactly like, I don't know, every 6 months or so, you'll get an article that comes out that's like, oh, Yellowstone is a super volcano and it's about to
Mhm.
explode. And it's
Yep,
like,
yep.
no, it's not. Like,
Oh, that's good, because I always get a little concerned about that one.
no. It's like, I've talked about this, I think, several times on the podcast before. Like, literally, just don't worry about it. It's fine.
We're not going to die. Good.
It's fine. Like, unless the announcement comes from the Yellowstone Volcano Observatory that's run by
Yeah.
the USGS, don't worry about it. It's just exaggeration. So anyway, so that article sort of struck me like as like
Yes.
similar to one of these articles where it's like, we found it, we're done. And it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
probably
Well,
not.
Well,
It is a bit sensational. It is. I mean,
Yes.
there's no two ways around it.
Yeah, that's the word for it.
I hadn't read it when I sent it to you. It's something that had popped up in my Google page when I go on my phone to go search for things. I get this list of random topics compared to things that I have searched for in the past. So it's a weird hodgepodge of things.
Sure.
And this article popped up and I was like, how weird is it that we're going to like, you had just been like, we're going to talk about Roanoke. Oh, so here you go. Here's my spooky
well,
moment.
there's your coincidence. Yeah.
It is. And then this article pops up and I'm like, what is the chances? So I decided to share it.
Yeah.
I hadn't read it at the time. I have
Yeah.
read it since. And I'm just like, yeah, I mean, basically the article is, we did some archaeology. We found some stuff. It's not associated with Jamestown. And there you go. That's it.
Right.
That's basically what Megan and I said about it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what the article says. And then there's a group of people who are like, no, it's Roanoke, and there's nothing to make the connection. So
Yeah.
Right.
not in this
right.
article, not
Yes.
provided by this article anyway.
Right. Yes, perfect. So
Sorry to take all the fun out of that. I apologize.
not taking
That's
the fun
what
out
we're
of
here
it.
for.
Taking the fun out of stuff.
we're good
That's
at
what
this,
we
yeah.
do.
This podcast should just be called "We Take the Fun Out of All the Weird Things That You Think Are Interesting."
Oh, you think that's interesting? Let me explain to you why it's not.
So I've got a question about maps, and wasn't White? He was sent there, or part of his job was to sketch out the land and the flora and fauna, and some of the sources that I've looked at, and I mean, we're talking really academic sources like YouTube. We'll talk about the map and how there was a section that had been covered up. And I think it's kept in the British Museum or something nowadays, and so people have come up with some theories about what was covered in this part of the map, and I can't remember what technology they used to see what was under that, but it looked like there was possibly a fort there, and there was a strange symbol. So I wonder if you can talk to that a little bit about
Totally.
what that meant.
So yeah, we can kind of move on to, or we are moving on to, okay, what the heck happened to these people? And what Karen was talking about was that one of the ideas is, and it was their intention. So they weren't even supposed to end up at Roanoke. And so I think once they get there, White thinks that their intention is that they're going to eventually try to move inland or move north and be closer to Chesapeake Bay, which is where they were supposed to be. And yeah, so one of these things is that on one of White's original watercolor maps that he had created, there was a patch on it. And this was analyzed by the British Museum, and what they found, they used X-ray and I guess an infrared light technologies. But what they found was this is a section that's about 50 miles inland from Roanoke, so consistent with what they thought they might, or where they thought they might move. And they see that there's like potentially some sort of like essentially invisible ink, like either lemon juice or milk-based invisible ink that shows that there was a marking for a fort on the patch. And they call that Site X, which like makes it sound very spooky. But
as someone who gets to name sites sometimes, that is the lamest site name. You couldn't have, because the other one is Site Y, and I'm just like, really? No.
Yeah.
Look,
Although
man, it is the barking dog site. It is, there's a cow here site. It's the grass is green on it. You think I'm kidding? You think I'm joking? There's the Peacock site. I have worked at the Peacock site. It is thusly called because the people whose house was right across the street from our site had peacocks, and we had to listen to them. And they're pretty, but they are loud.
Yeah, that's I've heard that.
There's the Bears Here site because we saw the bears and we wanted people to know that before they went back out there. There was the Turkey Chased Me site.
Much better than X and Y.
That's my point.
Yeah. Well,
anyway,
now
I'm sorry.
I'm just very disappointed because to me it was like, oh, it's very like this is a very
lazy.
spooky, like, oh, Site X, and you're like, no, that's terrible. It should be something else.
Honestly, the fact that it's named Site X and Site Y, especially since they decided to randomly start with Site X, kind of feeds into that sensationalism of it, because it is like, oh, Site X, it's
X marks the spot.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, one of the questions is like, oh, like, is this where they ended up, or where they actually ended up? And I guess so when I was reading about that, and maybe you guys will have opinions about this, but like I felt a little bit skeptical about that idea, because I don't know, like when was that map made? Like, why? I guess he would have added the patch to it later potentially, but we don't necessarily know when that patch was added or why it was added, and like, why wouldn't he go there to check? Like, I don't know. Like, was that just like on there earlier because he's like, oh, okay, we got here, it's terrible, these guys are dead, like, I'm gonna add a little proposed site on this map, and then he sails away and comes back 3 years later. You know what I mean?
Karen, do you have an opinion on this before I like steamroll all over it?
Well, now I'm scared. Anything I say is going to be wrong.
No. There are no wrong answers.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, maybe you've kind of already touched upon this already, but my thought was that was going to be the original site that they were going to move to, and then because they dumped them at Roanoke instead of going inland, then he just covered that up. Oh, that's a mistake. Now they're here instead. So I don't know. That's all I have to say.
Karen's right. So the map that's being referred to is the La Virginia Parse map. I'm sure I butchered that because I only speak English and a very little German. And that is neither of those languages. Anyway, the La Virginia Parse map was drawn by John White. And there are two spots actually on the map that have been covered up. It is housed at the British Museum in London. One appears to be a repair of the map itself, like the paper had gotten thin, and the patch is literally to fill a hole. The second covers up a diamond-shaped fort in the Bay Area. Both of these patches are very typical for maps of this era. It's a way of preserving and correcting the map. And so the invisible ink thing, that's a new one. I've not heard that before. So I would need to do more research into the invisible ink claim.
Yeah, I read that like several places, so.
Well, that again sounds really sensational to
Yeah.
me. And it could also be that what they're detecting, what's being interpreted as invisible ink by people outside of the field, might
Mhm.
be the adhesive used to get the paper to stick.
Oh, okay.
Because what these patches are is they're little tiny pieces of paper that have been glued on top of the map.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have Scotch tape back in the day or whiteout.
Yeah, or liquid paper. Yeah.
Yeah, that hadn't been invented yet. So how they would repair the maps is they would basically glue little patches on top of the things that needed to be corrected. And one of them is a diamond-shaped fort that was on the original hand-drawn map that was then covered up. And it could very well be, and using Occam's razor, the most logical answer would be that yes, this was probably the original location that they were shooting for, and they missed it. And so White decided to fix it after the fact, which would mean that the location on the map was the projected location for the Roanoke colony, not the actual location of the Roanoke colony, because they never made it there.
Right. Yeah, and I guess I had thought that so where it's located is I think on like the Albemarle Sound. I have no idea. Or
I
bay
think
or something.
it's on another water
Yeah,
spot.
it's inland. So I guess I had thought that like the original location was north, like not necessarily just inland to the west. And so like that's why I think it's maybe seen as like a different location than I guess where they're originally supposed to go. But again, I have no idea. Like it also just seems like, well, maybe on the journey they decided let's go here instead. I don't know.
I mean, things happen once you make plans.
Yeah.
And then you get there and you realize your plans aren't going to work. These things happen. This is why we repair maps. And as archaeologists, you can tell when people are making decisions sometimes based on that. Or, something happened, like they're like, oh, we're going to go there and we're just going to walk our little butts right over to where that spot is and we're just going to sit right down and that's going to be home. And then they get there and like the tribes that the prior settlers decided to make friends with are still there and not happy to see you. You're probably like, it's cool. We'll just stay here. It's fine. It's things happen that change things. And the problem is especially with something like Roanoke, we don't have any documentation. We don't have any firsthand documentation from the settlers, from the colonists themselves. And really all we're running off of is White's accounts, which are, I mean, I'm not saying they're not correct. I'm just saying there are things that are unverifiable in them.
Right.
It's so you have to take these things with a grain of salt. It's not aliens.
So you're saying it could be witches then?
It could be. It could be there could be a curse on the land that was put there by the Celtic druids that made it over in their skin boats, who are also the predecessors to the Templars. So it's also a Templar curse, which would explain the cross. Right. It would also explain the cross because, as we know, all crosses lead to the Templars. And
this theory is going to become a thing. One day we're going to be looking this up again, and people will believe this.
Yeah. Although to be fair, in the Lawler book, he says, I know you're going to laugh, but he says that like the place where like Raleigh and like some of these other characters that were involved in this was like some place called Middle Temple, which like was somehow derived like from the Knights Templar organization. So I'm just saying it could be that.
I am at this point
Masons.
Not joking. Raleigh, I believe, was a Mason or is thought to be a Mason by the sources that I have, whose name may or may not be Scott Walter, which you should not take that as a good source.
Okay.
But yes, Walter sees Templars everywhere, and I believe
okay.
Walter also believes that Walter Riley was a Templar / Mason early follower.
Yeah.
And so from there, of course, it's all Templar.
Hmm.
Everything's Templar. And so I'm
Yeah.
sure he believes that the Cup of Christ is also buried somewhere in Roanoke, which would be why you can't find it. Because
Oh.
It's
I'm
all
sorry, I'm
coming together.
completely I'm
You're
completely
fine.
destroying things. I'm so
You're
sorry.
you're
But
not
yeah,
destroying anything.
these kind of theories do pop up because it's I can't say no. I mean, I can say no. I'm very confident saying no
Yeah.
because you can't prove it.
Yeah.
But since you can't prove it, I also can't debunk it. You know,
Sure. Yeah.
it's
But that's like, I mean,
yeah,
that's very, like Ancient Aliens sort of
exactly. It's
style.
exactly.
Like
Well,
weird connections and coincidences and stuff, which is like
Right.
definitely what we live for, but like also because we live to laugh at a lot of it. So
And the number of like backbends you have to do to make a theory like Walter's fit, which would also be the same theory that you were getting at with you yourself were not trying to push the Raleigh theory, but
yeah.
the number of backbends you have to do to make those things line up are more numerous than people were hungry. They went to a place where they knew there were friends and food,
right.
and so they packed stuff up and they moved. Now,
Yes.
the reason we can't find the exact location of the colony anymore is because damn thing was built out of wood.
Right.
It's gonna
Doesn't last.
disintegrate. These things happen. We do know that materials were reused. It's that again very common. Native Americans and their predecessors were constantly reusing old sites. So that's one of the reasons why there aren't more giant cities and locations and stuff throughout the North
Hmm.
Americas, is because those materials are valuable. And so when people were building things, they would reuse material. And so if
Hmm.
you're a tribe, you come across this abandoned fort, with all these nice cut logs and stuff. Hey, there's raw material waiting to be used. I bet I could use that
Right.
at home. So you're going to take that stuff apart and take it home. Any kind
Sure.
of refuse that might have been left behind by the settlers was probably acquired and reused as well, if it was anything of even remote value.
Yeah.
Any kind of pottery, any kind of basketry, any kind of textiles, or any of that kind of stuff probably got picked up and moved.
Yeah.
And then, because we know that there was trade going on between the settlers there and the Native Americans in the area. So Roanoke didn't vanish.
Yeah.
It just got recycled, basically. These
Yeah.
things
Yep.
happen. And then to hear from this article that, like I said, I've got issues with the article, but then to hear that they're finding this location, it's possible they found Roanoke.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not
Yeah.
impossible. I would like a lot more information before I say that they did.
Mm.
Yeah.
But what they're finding would be what I would expect if
Yeah.
I were
Right.
finding a early settler, early colony, an early colony. These are the things I
Yeah.
would
Right.
expect to see.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So that sort of, I guess brings me to one of the other points about that Site X is that they've been doing some excavations at it and have found pieces of colonial pottery that I guess that match up with like what the type of pottery that would have been used at the time of the Roanoke colony, and like not necessarily by the later settlers that would have been in that area. So like they don't think that it would have been just like, something later that got left behind. And I guess though that like some archaeologists say like, well, there's no way because like that location is just like even more into like hostile territory with respect to the Native American population. So it's like, why would they
Okay.
go somewhere more dangerous?
Right.
But yeah, but I don't know. It's just, so they found some stuff. They found some pottery at that location that like I guess is consistent with like what these people would have been using. But I think like some of it seemed like it sort of goes the way of like when we talked about like Bigfoot, it's like, well, we just need a body.
Yeah,
Like we
yes.
need to find some people buried here. Like we need to
sorry,
find.
That makes me think of another theory, and that is that there was cannibalism taking place. That they
Nom nom.
were the colony were either eaten by indigenous people or that they resorted to cannibalism themselves out of necessity.
You
So-
have like perfectly led us through each of these theories because that is another one I'm going to touch on.
Thank you.
And this is why Karen can keep Blake on control.
Oh, sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah, I've heard people refute that and say, "Oh, well, there are no bones left, so there's no evidence that there was cannibalism." And then other people saying, "Oh, that's because they used the bones for magic and for medicine, and that's why there's no evidence."
Okay, so reasons why bones aren't found. Bones are organic material. And they don't like to preserve, actually. It's actually, if you consider how many people have been alive, people and animals have been alive on this planet at some point, and then you just imagine all of those bones just piling up because bones magically don't disintegrate like every other organic material on the planet. You wouldn't be able to. We would have mountains of bones.
Sure.
We could go to space on bones. Like we could just climb the bone. Anyway, my point is that finding remains in general is actually fairly rare, especially older remains, because the older it is, the more likely it is to disintegrate. So,
even on that time scale, like of 500 years or whatever it's been.
Yes.
Sorry, I was working like the geologic time scale of like 500 years. This is the blink of an eye.
That actually completely fair. I retract my snark. Yes, you deal with timescales that are way longer than mine. But human skeletons, I mean, it's not any different for any other kind of animal. Any kind of skeletal material can plausibly disintegrate within a year.
Really?
Yeah, given the right kind of soil, the right kind of circumstances. I mean, bones don't like acid, and soil and water and minerals are very acidic, and they're very harsh towards organic material. And so, yeah, I mean, they'll take it apart.
Well, and that's, I mean, yeah, I guess I thinking about it, I am being stupid to think that
no, we don't use that word.
That they wouldn't, because, well, no, I'm saying because like the lab that I work in, like we've done projects on teeth and bones and stuff like that have been preserved, and yeah, it's like we just dissolve them in acid, and like the earth is especially that area where it's like warmer and more humid, like that's just exactly the type of environment that would lend itself to like dissolving the rocks that are there. But it's like, well, bones are mineral, so they're gonna dissolve as well. So like that's sort of like making my brain explode right now. But yeah, that's totally right, because that is totally a thing though, where I've like read these things or read all the Roanoke stuff, and I was like, yeah, but where's the bodies? And it's like, nope, they could just be gone.
And it doesn't mean cannibalism. I don't think there's any credible sources of cannibalism that I can think of. Granted, I am not an expert on every account of settlers with Native Americans, so I can't think of any accounts that are credible for cannibalism amongst the tribes.
The only thing that I found, and I hold on, let me pull it up real fast, but it's an article in Smithsonian Mag, and it's not specifically talking about Roanoke, it's talking about Jamestown. But in 2012, there was a team who excavated a girl's remains, and when they found her skull, there were cut marks, they said, on the jaw, face, forehead of the skull, along with those on the shin bone that they claim are telltale signs of cannibalism.
I don't know about telltale signs of cannibalism.
Yeah, I don't know what that means. I mean, that sounds great to me, but
Yeah.
I don't.
I mean, I think just
know
like
what that would
telltale
look
signs
like.
that someone had like cut the flesh off of her body.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
they found tool marks on the bones, which is indicative of defleshing, which is a known form of burial.
Okay.
Because especially when you're dealing with things like secondary burial, like sometimes different cultures will leave a body out so that all the fleshy bits go away, and or they'll get them up to a point where then they can just like scrape the fleshy bits off, and then they have another process that they rebury the bones with.
And there are some letters that apparently were written, and I found this in that same article, by George Percy in 1625 that reference them eating each other. So, so there is some textual references for it, plus like this potential forensic evidence from 2012 when they find this girl's skull. But it sounds like it could have been cannibalism, but like also it could have just not. Like it could have been something else.
Yeah.
Cannibalism is really hard to prove historically, mainly because it's the same thing with human sacrifice. People like to throw those things around. No, I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just saying that it's really hard to prove because there are a lot of factors that look similar. And it's just hard to say, yes, that's what that is. If you were to tell me that you had incisor scrapes on the bones, evidence of human tooth marks chewing the bone, that to me would be really good evidence of cannibalism.
Is that kind of it? Are there any other like they say telltale signs that that cannibalism is going on here? Like, is there anything else, or is it just that?
For me personally, I would need to see tooth marks on the bones.
Okay.
Because one of the things you have to understand, and I'm about to make your show really dark again, is that
we do it all the time.
History is incredibly political. And throughout most of history, especially American history, it has been the job of the white European colonist and settler to make themselves look good. And one of the ways they make themselves look good is by making everyone else look bad. And so... I'm not joking. Accusations of cannibalism and human sacrifice get thrown around because it's the fastest way to make somebody look bad. Go ahead, Karen. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say it totally fits in with that whole savage.
Yeah, exactly.
The savages and the primitives. And, look, we had to come here and colonize this place because they were just so backward. And so, it totally fits in with that ethnocentrism.
I mean, I think this was more like they thought the settlers were cannibalizing themselves.
Yes, yeah, like they were so desperate for food that
they were eating each other.
That they were eating each other.
Well,
and
okay.
I think the theories went both ways too. It was also that they'd been
that the natives
eaten by the indigenous people. Yeah.
So here's my thing with the settlers eating each other. You've got one skeleton with tool marks. I would expect to see more. I'm going to say one starved girl is probably not going to feed the entirety of the Jamestown colony at any point. So there's so many other things you could be looking at here. You could be looking at, I mean, just to be sensational, you could be looking at a murder and the attempt to cover up a murder.
I was going to say that.
You could be looking at, I mean, I don't know the context of how the bones were found. Were they found in a grave? Were they found in a refuse pit? Were they found outside of Jamestown? Is the skeleton that, because at that point you can kind of ethnically determine the skeleton. So is it a white girl? Was it a European girl? Was it a Native American person? who was this girl? I mean, also, you know, my victim button goes up. I'm just like, oh, of course it's a girl who's been cannibalized because we always victimize women.
Yeah.
And that's another way that you other people is by showing how brutal they are to their poor, delicate women folk. So there's that kind of a thing. Also, it could be she came into a really bad accident. Maybe she fell into a thresher. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of things that could have happened.
Yeah.
I'd need to see the report. I mean, I hate to be like that, but I'd need to have more information before I could make a call like that. And just immediately falling to the idea of cannibalism because there's tool marks on a bone, even her skull. I mean, your face doesn't have that much meat.
Sure.
Why would you scrape face meat if you're hungry?
Scrape face meat.
Face meat.
And I can't remember exactly. So I have two things here. So one, I think I had heard or read, and again, I'm going to have to double check this at some point, but
that's fine. Speculate with me.
Yeah, that's fine. That it wasn't just the marks on her body, but that they had also tested the bones for like nitrogen levels or maybe nitrate levels, and those were like particularly high. And so that was like evidence that they used as well to be like, oh, she was eating a diet like super high in protein, which unless they were like eating each other, they wouldn't have had access to that much meat. So it was another line of evidence that they used.
And I heard that as well, and I think it was in maybe one of the podcasts we listened to or something. But when reading this particular article and trying to find a little bit more about this, I didn't see anything about testing.
And then the other factor that I thought about, though, was like, okay, so they have...
Go ahead.
I'm going to be a stickler. So they have bodies and bones at Jamestown, but like not for Roanoke.
So Jamestown is a larger colony.
Okay.
So chances of preservation are much higher.
Okay.
They also could have been practicing better burial practices in general, which will help with the preservation of the body.
Okay.
And just because Jamestown and Roanoke are not, I mean, they're not that far apart in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I think it's only like 50 miles or something like that.
Yeah, but if they're burying their dead on a hill, that right there is going to help with the preservation process, especially if they're burying their dead in coffins of any material up on a hill, because that's going to provide layers of protection between the body and the natural elements. It's not fail-safe. And I can guarantee you, as many bodies as they've recovered from Jamestown, they've probably lost twice as many because of natural processes. I mean, I've done historical cemeteries, and most of the time what you find is it's actually really cool. If they've been buried in a wood casket, you'll find the outline of the casket, and it's very defined. Like it is a perfect black line in the dirt. And on the outside, you have usually undisturbed dirt, or there's an area of disturbed, and then there's undisturbed. And then inside the coffin, you find dirt, obviously. But you'll find, if you're lucky, you'll find bone meal, and what we call basically it's coffin fat, and it's what you think it is.
Sounds as bad as face meat.
Yeah. But see, at that point, I wasn't actually talking about like a real past person. I was talking about a metaphorical past person. Anyway, I get weird when I talk about the dead. But that's how you know you have a burial.
Yeah.
And if there's any kind of metal involved, you'll find the metal.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
Yeah. Okay.
So finding a full skeleton is actually a pretty big deal. And I'll guarantee you that most of the people that they've pulled out of Jamestown, if they do have full bones, they don't have full skeletal remains, probably. They probably have bits and pieces of the skeleton that were left behind. Like some parts might have... so one of the coolest ones I've ever saw. We found this lady, and she had a glass lid coffin. and half of the glass had collapsed. So half of the glass pressed down onto her body at one point, and the other half of her body was not touched by the glass. And so when we recovered that grave, half of her that was under the glass was like preserved. It was the creepiest thing, one of the creepiest things I've ever seen. Wow. Because the other half of her was gone.
Oh, that's so weird.
It had returned to the earth, ashes to ashes. And it's I mean, that just tells you like the things that can happen, the variables that can happen in a grave that can determine the difference between the preservation of the body and the loss of the body.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the exact same grave. The only difference is one half of her had glass pressed down on it, and the other half was left to the elements, basically.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and really gory.
Yeah. So what would have caused the glass to fall in? Would that have just been pressure from soil?
It was just a pressure from the soil. It was a glass and lead casket cover, casket lid. Well, it would have been really fancy. Because we assume she was wealthy just based on the coffin that she was put in and the clothing that she had on, the leftovers of the clothing she had on. So yeah, they probably it was just, I mean, it's a lead joint. It's not really made to withstand the pressure of that much dirt over time. Plus asphalt and a building. So
that's very cool. But that, I guess, brings us to I guess sort of wrapping up that theory, right? So like the cannibalism is sort of part of this idea that whether it was like famine or drought or disease, you know, they just all died. And like that's what it is.
Well, I think, that's what I was wondering too. I mean, is it likely that they would have all suffered the exact same fate? I mean, to have 116, 117, I keep hearing
115.
Well, 115. Paige, your notes about the cypress tree cores that they had done, your notes had said that there was a similar period of drought in Jamestown as they had found at Roanoke. And I'll let you touch on do you just want to touch on that? Because that'll sort of answer the question. But my point was that like from that Jamestown drought, only 38 of like the original 104 people survived. So like it was rough going, I think.
Though, like, and I'll talk about it here in a second. I mean, with a drought like that, there are plenty of reasons that people could have died. It could have been that they didn't have enough food, that they were sick because of not having the proper water quality, or, you know, in this theory where they claim that they were eating each other. Obviously, some people would have died that way too, if that truly happened. So, I mean, same cause, but maybe different fates. If that makes sense.
Right.
So yeah, I had done a little bit of research about these bald cypress trees that they've taken samples from and done some analysis on. And it basically, the way this works, they take a sample. They've taken samples from trees, century-old trees and swamps along the Virginia-North Carolina border. And then they take them back, and basically scientists use microscopes to examine the cores and take very precise measurements of ring widths and cell density. And depending on their location and type, the trees can give a pretty good idea of what the climate was at that period of time. So they do these tree ring studies on these trees, and those were done by the Arkansas climatologists, and then it was kind of compared to information and research that had been done by archaeologists from William and Mary's Center for Archaeological Research. And what they ended up finding out was that there was this drought condition from about 1587 to 1589 in Roanoke. And while there's not a ton of information about kind of what that looked like in Roanoke, they do find that there's also a similar drought in Jamestown from 1606 to 1612. And during that time in Jamestown, like I said, they have a lot of their crops died. So they didn't have a great supply of food. And it caused some tensions with some of the Native American tribes nearby because that's what they used for trade. Poor water quality issues, which, like I said, can cause illness. So it could have just caused people to die because they got sick. Or, they could have been eating each other. So that's a lot of, like I said, the kind of the research that I did on that. I don't know if you have any comments about that or any thoughts about that.
Oh, no, I mean, Jamestown is, if there was a problem weather-wise in Jamestown, it doesn't surprise me that the same thing would be happening in the Roanoke area because, like I said, there's not a huge distance. I mean, there's a large distance, but it's not like massive. It's not like different sides of the country.
Right.
So yeah, the climate in Jamestown is probably very reflective of the climate in Roanoke. I don't know why it wouldn't be. And everything you said is correct. I mean, there's a variety of different reasons why an episode of extreme weather can cause so many deaths. And it's a lot of times it's like a chain reaction. It's like dominoes, the one thing starts and then it causes the next thing and then it causes the next thing. And of course, humans are known for being sanitary. So there's no way that if one person got sick, it would not have spread to every freaking other person.
Right. Topical.
Unless they're wearing masks, yeah.
I have so many snarky things I want to say, and I'm just not going to.
But you can say them. This is a safe space for snarky comments.
And then, like, Jamestown was a much bigger settlement. It was a much more successful settlement. It was a much better prepared settlement. So if Jamestown was having issues, I can totally 100% believe that Roanoke was having problems.
Yeah. Well, and I
and not doing well with them.
Right. I can see how this alone, just that drought alone could almost cause any of these other theories to kind of fall into place. Like we talked about people relocating and leaving that area. Well, you don't have any food or you have poor water quality or, you're all getting sick, like great time to leave. Yeah. Or, go back to this cannibalism thing. But yeah, all of these, it kind of feels like, if there was a bad weather, if there's a bad climate situation, you didn't have any food or you didn't have good survivable conditions, like you're going to find somewhere else to go or you're going to...
If you have the ability to pack up and move, you're going to pack up and move.
Right.
Right. And that was kind of my impression was like, why couldn't it just sort of be like a little bit of all of these? Like some of them died, some of them maybe got killed, some of them moved somewhere else and like assimilated or with Native American tribes. Like it could be any of these things. Like it's just such a...
And all of them.
Yeah. I mean, it's a harsh environment that they are difficult environment that they moved into. Like I just like things already weren't great there, and it's like if you liken it to something today, it's like, oh, okay, like we're gonna ship you off to the moon to establish a colony or ship you off to Mars to establish a colony. Like good luck. So yeah.
I think in that kind of a situation you would have a more likely chance of cannibalism.
Sure.
I do want to put a hard red X on the cannibalism idea just because...
Oh, that's fine.
Personally, I think it's... I personally am incredibly skeptical of historical claims of cannibalism and human sacrifice. Hard stop.
Well, so funny enough, in my notes, I even put, even if this is true in Jamestown, like there's nothing that leads us to believe it was happening in Roanoke. Like there's no
and then there's
evidence whatsoever.
There,
yeah. Yep.
But yeah, like Karen said, it's entirely possible that all of these things happened. All of these things occurred.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, more like in the sense of, they might have, a significant number of them may have just died because conditions were bad.
Yeah, the chances of all 115 original settlers were alive what is that, 4 years after they arrived,
Yeah.
is very
Yeah, it
slim.
seems unlikely.
Slim to
Very
none.
slim.
Do we have much of an idea of? I know that the ratio of women to men was kind of out, but do we have any idea of the ages of the people? It seems like there were some children, but were they
I want
many
to
older
say
people?
there were like 87 men, maybe like 17 women, and like 10 kids or something. Like
Those
there weren't
poor
that
women.
many.
Either that or those where they were like ironclad rule. Like
Yeah.
those things tend to happen. It's like they're either completely put upon or they're like, no, this is how this is going to work. I have the magical thing you want. You can't have it unless I get my way.
What were the ages of the children? Do you know?
I don't
like, there's
know.
no way all those kids survived.
Well, no.
Mm.
I mean, this was like, I think I read something about the time period, and it was like, this was a time period where it was like, 50% of kids didn't make it past
Right.
infancy.
Yeah, I would be impressed if, what is it, Virginia?
Yeah.
I would be surprised if Virginia made it out of her infancy,
Yeah.
given the circumstances.
Yeah.
To be morbid.
Does that bring us to talk about the Dare stones?
Yes. So then we can kind of, I guess, circle back to, this idea that they may have relocated to a different location. And one of the, I don't know, potential biggest pieces of evidence related to that is something that people call the Dare stones, which Sarah's going to tell us about. I'm very excited about.
I was like, how much do you want to know? So, the Dare stones. The Dare stones are a series of stone carvings. They're attributed to Eleanor Dare, who supposedly wrote, I believe there's 47 of them at last count, maybe 48, of these stones that are supposedly scattered throughout the trail of plight that the Roanoke settlers moved on after they realized that white wasn't coming back for them. Now, fun story. No one in the academic fields who are actual academics actually believe that the Dare stones are real.
Okay.
Really
Not even the
attributed.
first one? I've heard that one's
No.
authentic. All the others are hoaxes.
No, they're all hoaxes. Sorry. You can go home now. Woo!
Yay!
No. The original one was, if the forger had stopped at the original one,
Mm-hmm.
we would probably have a harder time with this.
Yeah.
Only because it would be a one-off, and those things usually they stay alive, and that's why a lot of times you will hear people say, "Oh, the rest of the Dare stones are fakes, but the first one is definitely real." You'll hear people say that for real,
Yeah.
and no. So
Some orbs are ghosts. Yeah, I've heard that.
yeah, it's that exact same. Yeah,
no.
I can tell the difference
Some-
between a ghost orb and a dust orb. Really?
Yeah, some's dust and some's just rain, and others are ghosts. So.
Some of them are real. See, this one has a face. Yes. So
I just thought of my spooky story.
Oh,
Dang it.
that's strange.
faces in the brain.
I know exactly what you're going to say, Paige.
Yeah. Is this an inappropriate time for me to cut in?
Go for it, because I'm going to start slamming a man's character here in a second. So
So here's what I'll say. I've been locked in my room for like 4 or 5 days. And
On a more serious note, Paige is waiting for COVID test results. So
I was going to ask.
she's not symptomatic, but
but it's, who knows? It's better safe than sorry, I say.
Exactly.
So
Yes,
I've been locked in my
I've
room.
been tested before too. So
It's not fun.
No.
And I'm laying in my bed, maybe day 2, day 3, and I'm looking at my curtains. And they're like paisley curtains, but I can see faces in them. 100%.
yeah.
like, Zach Bagans, there are faces in my curtains.
Yeah, she texted me and another friend a picture with like the faces circled, and she's like, "You guys, there are faces in here, right?"
Wow.
I love it.
That reminds me of a short story. It's called The Yellow Wallpaper.
Yes.
I haven't read it, but I've heard about it. And about a woman, I think her husband is a psychologist or something, and he locks her up. And maybe I shouldn't give away the story, but something similar happens to her.
Yeah, that's me right now.
Yeah. The mind
Anyways,
can play tricks on you.
I'm
Okay.
really sorry that took a real turn. Dare stones.
I was going to make a Hitchcock reference, but whatever. We can talk about Dare stones. So the majority of the Dare stones, I think personally, all of the Dare stones can be attributed to the lovely trio of James G. Lester, Haywood Pierce Jr., and Ben W. Gibson. And also William Bill Eberhard, who is a stonecutter, which is important.
Yeah, that was the kicker of that too. It was like, you're like, oh yeah, that original one might have been real. And then they sort of reveal like, oh yeah, the guy who found it was a stone cutter. And it's like,
you should have just stopped at one.
Yeah. Well, and like,
it's just stopped at one.
Yeah. It's like somebody, releasing footage of like the best video of a ghost ever released. And then like you find out that the person, like their job is CGI or something.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, you're darn right if that were real.
I think it's suspicious that they weren't found until 1937 as well.
Right, exactly. They start popping up the first one is found in 1937, and they are found all the way up until 1940. That was when the last official Dare stone was found. The very first stone itself is discovered 80 miles north of the Roanoke colony. So we know they didn't go north because they would have had absolutely no reason to go north. There was nothing to entice them to do that. The next stone popped up, the second one that was found by the stonecutter himself, found. The next stone pops up 300 miles southwest, all the way in what is now South Carolina. So the distance between these stones is ridiculous for the time. I'm trying to, there's 47 of them. And the
so
thing
many.
Well, and they're kind of, like I said, they're kind of sprinkled around like breadcrumbs, and they kind of sort of chronologically tell a story that supposedly Eleanor Dare is writing as she's being moved along. Because the story that's being told is basically they've been taken hostage and they're being forcibly marched by the tribes, by the imagined Native Americans who came to get them. And I want people to understand that this is complete BS.
Yeah.
But these kind of stories worked back in the 30s because of the hard R word. It was easy to believe these kind of things, and it was easy to be sensational back then. And today we have the internet, so you can't pull stuff like this on us today.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I had heard, so like the original one, had the writing on it, and they translated the message or whatever that was on it. But it was mentioned that, people say that the language on it can be somewhat anachronistic, and the fact that she supposedly carved her initials into it, like EWD, like people didn't sign things with their initials.
Women especially didn't sign with their initials. Yeah.
Right. And I've also heard, like, I guess with respect to problematic ideas about, the Native Americans and stuff, that she has like, so this, or well, not Eleanor, but her daughter Virginia Dare has sort of like in some circles become like a symbol for sort of like white nationalism and stuff, because she's like the lone like blonde white girl who's like stuck among, so it's just like it's stupid.
The image of Dare has become a problematic image, not because of anything she herself did, but it has been appropriated by unsavory groups who choose to believe unsupported ideas. And yeah, that is a very unfortunate thing to happen. The stones themselves, I mean, like I said, the true believers are going to believe them, but they've been examined by multiple people who do these things. Again, words, I don't have them anymore. Experts, those things. And like you were saying with the language, the language is incorrect for the time period. Spelling is incorrect for the time period. The signature, again, is another very unusual thing for the time period. And it is highly unlikely that they would have been doing that. And then if you just kind of think about what's supposedly going on at the time that these stones are supposedly being carved, I mean, if you're being, you're being forced to migrate constantly, at a constant pace of 300 miles, in a few days, when did you have time to sit down and find a hammer and chisel? Because remember, we're talking white Europeans at this point. They don't understand, non-metal tool use. So where did she get the hammer and chisel? When did she have the time to sit down? How is it convenient that she found these perfectly sized stones every freaking time? And then you're going to tell me that this person was incapable of putting full sentences together? I mean, it's just there's not enough things that are adding up. And it turns out, so my favorite nail in the coffin, and if you hear my cat crying, I apologize.
Oh.
It's apparently that time of the night. There was an article published that angered Pierce. Remember, he was one of the guys I mentioned. He was the one that was selling these things as being real. And after the article was published, Pierce decided to confront Eberhard, the stone carver. And as a response between this conflict that the two buddies were having, Eberhard forged another stone with the inscription that said, "Pearson dare historical hoaxes, we dare anything." And he threatened to turn that over to the Saturday Evening Post if Pierce didn't pay him.
Yikes.
And at this point is when Pierce comes out and goes, "Oh, I was completely bamboozled."
Yeah.
So the stones themselves were basically debunked by the people who created them around the time period that they were created.
Right.
But because it tells such a great fiction, they live. And then, of course, they get picked up by shows like America
History
Unearthed
Channel stuff.
and the History Channel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think because there's such little evidence as well, that's why these have been really seized. But where are they housed nowadays?
They are actually housed at one of the universities.
So they're still historical in a different way.
They are historical.
Not authentic, but
no, they are historical, and they are probably one of the better examples of historical fraud. And so the Dare Stones they have archaeological value and they have historical value in that they are examples of hoax and history being used as a crutch for that. These guys were getting paid by the stone, which is why they kept finding them. Which is why there's 47 of them and not one. But they're valuable to keep around for that reason.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to find the location of the stone. Brenner University in Georgia. That is where the Dare Stone collection is housed. It was curated by Dr. Jim Sutherland, who was a professor of history, but he has long since retired. And he himself has a group that studies the stones. When he was there, he had his undergraduates study the stones with him. And I mean, they're not real.
Yeah. Okay.
They're a real physical object. They exist in the world. They are not really
authentic.
what people claim them to be.
Yeah. Well, I guess then if we can, so we'll circle back to, I guess, the obvious answer is that they went to go and live with the Croatoan tribe on what's now Hatteras Island. I guess first I just wanted to mention, one of these other ideas is that, they were just straight up killed by the Native Americans, because we know that, there were several groups of them that were pretty angry with the Europeans at this point. But again, like you said, you don't want to perpetuate this idea of like, oh, they were all just murderers and out to get them and stuff. But, or that, that you had Spain, who was also like, we want to find this colony and get rid of it because we don't want England to get a foothold. So like, there's a possibility that some Spanish showed up and killed them to get rid of them.
More than likely, if that were to happen, what the Spanish would have done is come in and taken over the fort.
Oh, okay, that's a good point.
They wouldn't have whole slaughtered, killed a bunch of people because people are resources.
Okay.
Those people are already there.
Okay.
Probably what they would have done was sent in troops, taken over the fort, and basically told all of those people, "Congratulations, you're Spanish now."
Yeah. Congratulations, you're Spanish.
Pretty much, yes. That was where I was going with that.
Yeah.
Especially since there were, what you said, like 17 women.
Yeah.
They're not going to do that.
Yes.
The Spanish were Catholics and believed in propagating. Put two and two together.
Yeah. And so there are, there's a little bit of, I guess, I don't know, conspiracy theory with respect to White's account of like what happened. So John White's original account of what happened and like what he might have been trying to cover up. So I guess some people have suggested that that like it's possible that White, came upon the colony and knew that they were all dead, or like had evidence that they were all dead, or like they were, that's what had happened to them by the time he gets back, but that he's under pressure from Walter Raleigh to not say this, to like not say like, oh well, they're all gone and the colony failed, because Raleigh, if his colony fails, like loses his charter. So like it's, I guess I just wanted to raise like it's possible that there's like something political going on here, but like I have no idea. That's all just probably hearsay, but
no, I mean,
or conjecture.
Yeah. It is possible.
Yes. Yeah. And so I guess that just brings us all the way back to the beginning, which is the idea that the colonists just did what they said that they did, right? If the Croatoan writing was real, that they just packed up and went to live with this local tribe. And it's like, I'm of the mind of like, it's probably a little bit of everything, right? Like you definitely had settlers like having conflicts with Native Americans. So it's possible some of them got killed that way. It's very possible that some of them died because like these are pretty hazardous conditions that they're living in. We know from evidence from these cypress trees that like there was a drought, so things probably weren't great food wise. So like they left a note. They probably went where they said that they went. Like,
and I think the fact that there wasn't a cross there as well, signifying distress.
Yeah. So, and they were supposed to like leave this cross to let them know, like, if they were in distress when they left. And I guess like the only thing against that is something that, Sarah kind of mentioned, which is like, you have to view this account a little bit through the lens of like what was going on with White, because like it's his, he's the leader of this colony. He's supposed to be coming back to save them. So it's like, is some of this just him covering his own ass to be like, oh, they went to live with the Indians, this is fine, like I didn't totally fuck this up. So Yeah, so we don't know because it's sort of just lost. But there are accounts of a man named John Lawson who is said to have traveled to the Croatan Island or Hatteras Island in 1701, where he reported that the Indian tribe there told him that they had white ancestors who could read from books and presumably, speak English, and that many of them actually had gray eyes. So, he saw that as being a European feature that they would have inherited. And then they found artifacts on the island associated with these old Indian villages, like a sword hilt, some broken English bowls, fragments of a slate writing tablet. So it's like, yeah. And I guess that's tough because, you don't know if it's just stuff that was traded to them or not.
You don't know the extent. Trade is an amazing thing. So yeah, you don't know the extent of the trade. Understanding trade routes is like one of the first things that's drilled into our heads as archaeologists, because that's how stuff gets from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And stuff can travel pretty far. So yes. But there's a lot of really good reasons to trust the idea that they went to Croatoan and that they created that settlement there. The blue eye thing,
it's kind of
I have
hearsay.
to hear how many times that there's blue-eyed Native Americans back in the day. These are recessive genes, people. We know how this works. Even with the mixing. But oral traditions shouldn't be completely pushed to the side. I mean, if there's no reason not to believe that, keeping in mind that that's only 60 miles between Roanoke and Croatoa, so that's a very easy trek to do. And from what I understand, the terrain itself isn't crazy. So, and 60 miles is if they went the long way. And they were like, screw the shortcut, we want the scenic route. That's how far away they were. So I mean, there's no reason not to believe that that isn't what happened. And then you have an oral history that also backs it up, a reliable oral history that also backs it up. Then you also have archaeological evidence that correlates with both of those things. There's no reason not. That's the kind of evidence I want to see. When you tell me you found something. I want to see multiple piles of evidence that all correlate together. And then you can tell me, that's where the Roanoke people went. And I'm going to be like, that is probably exactly what happened. Is it? Am I ever going to say I am 100% scientifically and professionally sure that that is where the Roanoke people went? Probably not. Because I've been trained not to do that. But as a person, that's probably exactly what happened. I mean, I, as Sarah, do not have a problem saying that's what happened. It's kind of like I, as Sarah, am okay saying it wasn't aliens. And it wasn't the Templars. Because you want to back me into a corner scientifically? I'm only going to give you 99.9%.
And it wasn't cannibalism. That's the other important thing.
I'm a hard no on the cannibalism.
Are you 100% sure that it wasn't?
No, I can't do it. I'm still only I'm still only 99% sure it wasn't cannibalism.
I sort of like your theory that it was like somebody, like it was somebody covering up like a murder or something. I shouldn't say that I like it, but like,
I have as much evidence for that as there is for cannibalism. I'm
well,
just throwing that out there.
My favorite part about that article is they mention that like her tongue and her brain or whatever have like obviously been eaten. And her brain is eaten first. Anymore. And I'm just like, how do you know though? And even if you did know for certain that one was eaten or like that they were eaten, like how do you know which came first? Because they state that they're pretty sure the brain came first. Anyway, sorry.
I mean,
back to cannibalism.
I'm just saying here, like, this is a very side note, but like, if I'm gonna eat somebody, like, I'm not starting with the brain.
Well, I guess it's because they say that it decomposes the fastest. So, like, if you don't eat it first, then, like, you're not going to be able to eat
Okay.
it.
Well, like if I'm
Okay.
already having to swallow the idea of like, okay, I'm gonna yeah, that's a fun, but that I'm going to like have to eat another person. Like, I don't know. I'm starting with the butt or something, right? Like something that's the most similar to like
You put some thought
pork.
into this.
Haven't we all though?
No. I will
Clearly,
be
you have
tonight,
not.
though, I'm sure. Yeah.
It's a discussion to be had.
But yeah, 2 a.m. tomorrow morning, I will.
You need to have this with your kid. You need to be like, all right,
Yeah.
this is
Here's
what
the
happens.
part that you eat first.
If you're ever in a starving colony of people in another country, eat the butt first. So my thing here, now that you're saying these two details,
Oh, are you changing your mind?
no, I'm kind of wondering if like, how do they know the brain was eaten? Was the skull itself fractured? Because all you guys mentioned was tool marks, which is a completely different statement than the skull itself was penetrated.
Oh, let me pull it back up so I can.
The tongue thing, I have
Be
absolutely
certain.
no idea how you would know that the tongue was eaten, except that tongue is really not that bad of a cut of meat. So I don't know about human tongue, but animal tongue is actually fairly tasty and not. It's usually consumed.
I'm a vegetarian, guys, so.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it just.
So this is particularly horrifying for you.
I'm sorry, Karen. I'm very sorry.
It sounds not really tasty to me, but.
It states that there are strikes to the back of the head, one of which was the strongest and split the skull in half.
Ooh.
See, that's a different statement.
I think she got
That's
murdered.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay, sorry.
sounds
Go
like
ahead.
murder to me. I mean, that's what happened after she was murdered. Maybe they ate her.
But it's like, yeah,
I'm not
that's
willing
my
to go
thing.
there. I'm not willing
Yeah.
to go
Like-
there.
Just because my head's cut open doesn't mean that you're cutting it open to eat me.
Yeah.
I mean, and also the consumption of animal brains
Right.
is very common as well. I mean, my family is 100% American mutt, and my great uncles and grandfathers ate.
Like squirrel, and I've heard of
Oh yeah,
some parts of the country people eating squirrel brains.
Oh yeah, I mean yeah. It's garden hunting. You eat small animals, snare hunting,
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff. It's a way of supplementing the diet. But yeah, my family, the southern half of my family, has on record us eating scrambled eggs and pork brain.
There you go.
There
You
you
just
go.
chop it up and scramble it together. It's like an omelet.
Okay.
I have never eaten it knowingly.
Okay.
Yeah, knowingly. Nor have
But
I.
It's a very common dish. So I mean,
Yeah.
if we're going to justify eating a person and eating the brain and the tongue, these are both cuts of meat that are regularly consumed, just not usually from humans.
My point is just like from the psychological standpoint of it, like
Exactly.
that's like if you're gonna eat somebody, like that is rough to go straight for their brain.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and they do make mention that like they believe that like the facial tissue was like ripped off to eat. So like it wasn't just the brain. I don't know.
understand why
Back
you
to
would
the
go
face
after the
meat
face
thing.
meat. Yeah, it's just there's.
Maybe there was just like a lone cannibal murderer.
I mean, anything's possible. Anything's truly. Humans are amazingly horrible. So
Yes. Oh yeah.
it could happen that there was just one crazy lunatic who was like, you know what? You look
I'm gonna
so
eat this
damn
girl."
good. It could also be that this poor woman was murdered. Because that certainly sounds like murder.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
but
like,
that's-
are there, yeah, I mean, people do like archaeological or forensic things. Like they say, like, oh, these are telltale signs of cannibalism, but it's like, yeah, but it sounds like they could also be telltale signs of this person got murdered.
Yeah, I mean that's
Yeah.
why I'm a hard no on these things, because
Yeah.
it could be a number of things. Like I said, if I saw tooth marks, if you said there are gnaw marks on the bones.
Yeah.
And you can compare gnaw marks, tooth marks to humans and know that they are human tooth marks. This is a real thing that you can do.
Yeah.
If
Like,
you
did you
told me
find
you
a
had
rack
that-
of ribs with tooth marks on it? Because, like, sure.
Or if you were telling me that the long bones had been cracked for the marrow
to get to the
harvesting,
marrow? Okay.
you would have a much stronger argument for me at that point, especially if you could prove that it was compaction that broke the long bones and not animal canines, which again are two different tool marks on the bones. Yeah, you got a long road to convince me of cannibalism is what I'm saying. I'm sorry.
I could talk about this for an hour itself, so I'm going to stop there.
Sorry.
But
Yeah,
maybe some other day we can have a whole episode about cannibalism.
Karen will never come on
Doesn't
a podcast
really fall.
again.
No, it's okay. In context, it's okay.
I don't know how we got here, Megan.
It's fine. It's fine. This is. I think I
brought us here.
I think I warned you guys when we set this up via Twitter that we tend to go off the rails a little bit. So it's fine.
Part of the fun.
We
Okay.
both come from
That's
very
life.
chaotic podcasts.
Yes.
So.
So the last serious thing, I guess, with respect to, this idea of assimilation is that, there are modern efforts to do DNA analysis to try to, like, basically in the same way that, they're creating all these genetic profiles of people's ancestry, but to specifically try to do it to figure out if there are, people with Native American ancestry from that area who perhaps share, the same surnames as the colonists, but who may be, they would have DNA that suggested that they lived with the Native Americans and that they, had kids with them, and that now we have those people still walking around. So.
And unless you want to do another entire episode about why that's a complete load of bullshit.
Oh, okay.
Sorry to drop that bomb on you. I apologize.
Oh, no. Well,
yeah, ancestry through DNA is not reliable.
really?
No.
But, like, you mean like
That
even
does
in the
sound
general
like-
sense of people saying, like, oh, you've got 2% whatever from this area.
Okay, so first things first. Ethnicity is not genetics.
Okay.
Race cannot be determined by genetics.
Right.
The best you could possibly get from one of those tests is, unless you come from a very specific group, something like the certain bands of the Jewish ethnicity are very distinct. And I don't want to say the name because I know I'm going to butcher it.
Yeah,
and
I
I'll
do
just
too. I know what you're saying.
look like a freaking idiot, like I already do. But that group has a very distinct genetic marker to it.
Okay.
When you're talking about things
Isn't it like
like
Ashkenazi or something?
Yes,
I'll embarrass myself.
Ashkenazi,
Yeah.
yes. I'll let you do that.
I know what you're talking about. I also
Yeah.
don't necessarily know how to pronounce it, but I think that's close enough that, like,
Maybe you can
maybe
edit that
we'll
in,
get
a
it.
correct pronunciation.
Yeah.
No one will notice. But even then, you might be able to trace yourself down regionally, like Northern European.
Yeah.
But I challenge you to tell me what ethnicity is Northern European.
Yeah. Okay.
That kind of
I mean,
thing.
like, unless you had
It's just impossible.
specific lineage or something that you were going to look at.
If you're trying to prove lineage, you really can only do that through documentation, because the only way lineage matters is through documentation.
Okay.
You might be able to, like, the family legend for my family is that we're related to Paul Revere. If you somehow obtained an uncorrupted DNA sample of Paul Revere himself, you could hypothetically test my family, myself, and my living family members from the Rivers side of the family to see if we have a similar DNA profile.
Okay.
That's criminalistics. But unless they have a uncorrupted, I'm going to emphasize that more than once,
Mm-hmm.
uncorrupted DNA sample from White or Dare or any of the other settlers, which I'm going to go on a limb and say they don't. What are you testing?
Yeah. Okay.
Spit on a stick. That's what you're doing. I mean, it's literally what you're doing. That spit can be anything. And of course, they're talking about testing modern living people. You're going to tell me that that modern person who lives on the Cape there has no other ancestry in them whatsoever besides the Roanoke settler and whoever they integrated with the Croatoan.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I'm gonna throw a red flag on that and be like, no, bro, that's not gonna work.
Yeah.
Sounded so exciting, though.
I know. Well, I was very excited about it. I was like, oh, that's such a cool project. And, you hear so much stuff done with DNA, but yeah.
I will pass you Jennifer Raff's information. She comes on my Fantasies show pretty regularly because she is an archaeological DNA scientist.
Oh, so, very cool.
I will have you guys talk, and maybe you can get her on your show. She's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But she can really take this apart for you. I just get indignant. That's all I do.
Yeah.
Jennifer can explain to you in like actual scientific terms why it's bullshit. I'm sorry, why it's crap.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So that's like, the end of the more serious discussion of like what happened to these people. And of course, as Karen alluded to earlier, there are some insane, very reminiscent of, Skinwalker Ranch or Ancient Aliens theories that the entire colony got abducted by aliens. So that's why nobody knows where they went. Or
Karen, you want to take that one?
That explains everything.
Yes.
Well, I don't really know too much about it other than just they were abducted by aliens. So a spaceship turned up and sucked them up, and I don't know.
Well, and some people said I had heard on one source that some people who ascribe to this theory said that the marking that was on the map that they found with the patch, like it wasn't a fort, it was a spaceship.
Oh yeah.
No, that
explains it.
It's a very well-known map symbol, actually, that denotes a fort. Sorry. There's nothing special about this map.
It's aliens, Sarah.
It's not aliens. Refuse.
Yeah. So there's that, which, obviously is baloney. And then the other one, which unfortunately we're back to cannibalism, but the other one,
we just can't get away from that, can we?
The other one that
because if it's not Bigfoot, I'm not here for it.
Is totally out there, is that there was a zombie plague.
I did not see that coming. Oh my god!
Yeah, I heard that on a BuzzFeed YouTube video.
Yes, I think that's more fueled by popular culture depictions of Roanoke, because there have been I think there was a Supernatural episode, there was a Sleepy Hollow episode where they had some insane virus that made them act crazy.
Well, sure, but I mean, if you just go based off of what I talked about earlier, it's okay, you have a drought, people get sick, and then they start eating each other. Now they're zombies.
Yeah.
I mean, when you put that argument out there, it's flawless. A, B, profit.
Yeah. But yeah, sure. I'm sure somebody out there is, you mentioned Bigfoot. I'm sure somebody out there is like, yeah, Bigfoot, took them back to the Pacific
Probably.
Northwest. And
Oh, I'm
There's
sure
at least
if you
one person.
Googled that, yeah, that would have to be a theory somewhere.
yeah. Or like, it's not Bigfoot, it's the Lost Colony. Like that. Who have somehow gotten really hairy over the years.
Some kind of
Lost
hyperdimensional theory that
There
they
you go.
went to
There you
another plane.
Yes.
There you go. Now that area is known for the Bigfoot sightings. There are some Bigfoot sightings down there. So
Oh, in
Yeah.
North Carolina. Okay.
There you go.
yeah.
Hyperdimensional Bigfoot.
That's
I
it.
love that Bigfoot is now interdimensional. Like
And psychic as well.
I learned that from Monster Talk too. By the
Yeah.
way, that's you guys don't
Yes.
think I listen to your podcast. I do, just not chronologically.
10 years of talking about Bigfoot, we had to come up with some different theories.
I like transdimensional Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Transdimensional
Bigfoot.
psychic
Yeah.
Bigfoot.
Yeah, and he's psychic as well. Yep.
I like
And
it.
he's psychic as well.
Yeah.
He's got skills, man. What do you want?
It's crossover theories.
Oh, incredible. Yeah. So I mean those are the silly ones, but it's fun to acknowledge them. So did you guys, before we wrap up, have any other thoughts or anything else you wanted to plug or talk about?
I'm gonna let Karen go because I have dominated this. So
No, you're the one who knows the most. So that was that was obvious. I think the only thing I wanted to really add to the conversation, I wanted to raise it earlier, and we've kind of gone back and forth talking about Crow and Croatoan on the fence post. But another thing that kept popping up, especially on YouTube, is the belief that Croatoan has been connected to, the word has been connected to other mysteries.
mm-hmm.
And so one of those is Edgar Allan Poe's disappearance before he died. And it's said that Croatoan was also found in Amelia Earhart's journal.
Oh yeah. I've heard this one. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if this is true, but I think it was mentioned Ambrose Bierce before he died as well.
It sounds like you're giving us a whole new episode right now.
She's not wrong though. This is a theory. This is a real one. Yeah.
Okay.
There's this
yeah,
belief
just-
that Croatoan is like some kind of like keyword or something, or some kind of like group.
that seems to herald a disappearance of some
Yeah.
kind. But
Yeah.
it seems to me,
Oh.
just thinking in folkloric terms, that it's some kind of transplanted urban legend.
Uh-huh.
Mhm. It's a creepy pasta,
Yeah.
as the kids like to say these days.
But it has been connected to just a lot of mysterious disappearances.
Oh, that's
of various
interesting.
people.
Yeah, I hadn't read that at all.
But I'm sure Merriweather had that written in his journal before he somehow managed to murder himself twice.
I haven't heard it with any kind of contemporary theories, but you could imagine it being associated with J.D. Salinger as well, and just anyone who kind of disappeared.
Elvis.
Elvis, yeah, Elvis carved Croatoan into a banana and peanut butter sandwich. And
I believe it.
into the TV before he shot it. I don't know.
That's incredible.
Croatoan's actually Mothman. It's an ancient name for Mothman, who,
Yeah.
of course, we all know only appears when something bad's going to happen. Other than that, I have no idea what Mothman's powers are, but
Yeah. We haven't done a Mothman episode yet, so I'm sure Karen has way more thoughts on that, because I'm sure there's a Monster Talk episode about it.
Yeah, we've done a few because, particularly of late, there have been a lot of sightings around Chicago.
Oh, no.
So we've kind of
Chicago?
the Chicago
I live in a
Mothman.
Chicago suburb, so now I'm freaked out.
Well, if you Google it, we had a guest, Alison Journlin, come on the show, and she's gone to all of the sites. So I can't remember the guy's name, Lon Strickler or something. I think he's compiling a lot of sightings and experiences that people have had, but it just seems like there's not really much to it.
Uh-huh.
But
Mothman just got tired of being in the mountains. He's like, screw the mountains, I'm out.
yeah, he decided to assimilate with the Chicago people.
He was like, you know what I need? I need a real style Chicago dog.
Yeah.
I'm tired of
Yeah,
these fake
It's-
ones that I'm getting on the
Yep.
coast here.
Yeah. But like Mothman is where's the original stories? It's
Appalachia.
Okay.
He's an
Yeah,
Appalachian.
Point Pleasant or
yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So, North
Yeah.
Carolina.
I was gonna get really in the way. I was like, wait, is it North Carolina?
It is.
This is it.
It
This
is
is the answer.
the same area that you get to explore if you play Fallout 76. So,
Oh, okay.
because the Mothman cult is one of the in-player groups you can join.
Oh, interesting.
You can worship Mothman. I still don't know what the hell Mothman does.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. My impression was just sort of like a harbinger of bad luck, or someone's gonna
appears before something happens, and I think there was some attacks as well, and
Ooh.
I think that some of the sightings in Chicago have involved attacks.
Are we sure it's not the Spring Hill?
Well, that sounds about right.
Springfield Jack.
Yeah, little bit like that character as well.
Well, according
He's
to all of
coming
my
for you.
neighbors, it's not the problem is not Mothman, it's foxes.
Aw, you leave the
And I'm
foxes alone.
being serious. Our next door one of my favorite stories from when we first moved to this neighborhood was someone posted on Nextdoor, which is like the neighborhood social
I
networking
hate
thing.
Nextdoor so
Yeah,
much.
it's fucking terrible, but I stay on there because like just some of the things that
it's
people
horrible,
post
yeah.
is just they're just gold. But a
Yeah.
woman posted on there, and there are foxes in the area. Like I've seen them a couple times. Like I've had one sort of like walk behind like me and my dog because it was like happened to be going the same direction. Like it's fine. And I like to see them. And there was this period where it was like every other day somebody was like, "Oh, I saw the fox." Like as if it was like a threat to them.
This is one of my favorite stories.
Yes. And this woman posts on there and she says, "I saw the fox at the corner of something. I've called the police." And I was like, what
Well,
kind of suburban bullshit is this?
Well, the Mothman sightings have been attributed to barn owls, and that
Yes.
the glowing eyes are, the light from owls.
Yeah.
So that's, but the owls are commonly an explanation for a lot of paranormal claims.
Yeah.
Cryptids.
Well, and I've heard an owl outside of our house a year ago or so. And I was like,
It wasn't an owl, it was a Mothman.
It was a Mothman, apparently. Yeah, here I was like more worried about my
Depends how
tiny
you look at
dog
it.
getting snatched up by an owl, and I should have been worried about Mothman.
Definitely.
Okay. Well, that's all I have about Roanoke. Yeah.
It integrated into Mothman talk.
Now I
Very
really
connected.
want to do an episode about Mothman, but we'll
You
get
should,
there.
yeah.
So, Paige, do you
It's
wanna-
coming. It's on our list.
I'm gonna let you guys
Yes.
sweet talk Karen into that one because I know exactly nothing about
Excellent.
Mothman.
Yeah, I think Blake knows a lot more than me. But,
Sounds good. Paige, do you want to take us out there?
Yeah. All right. Well, that wraps up our Thanksgiving special this year. Thank you again, Sarah and Karen, for joining us to talk about the Lost Colony of Roanoke. It was a good time. We had fun.
thank
Good, I'm
you
glad.
for inviting us.
Yeah.
This was great.
Yeah, this
Thank
is
you
amazing.
for letting us.
Really
thank you for
interesting
letting
topic.
me rant for hours.
You know so much. You know so much.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
do.
it's incredible.
Thank you for ranting.
I don't know if I should be terrified or flattered.
Be
What?
flattered.
Be flattered. No, it was
No,
great.
that I know so much about bullshit. Anyway,
Oh,
no,
It's not bullshit. It's great.
this is a really critical period in American history. This is really important, and the fact that it's still a mystery to this day, and that you
Yeah.
could just shed so much light on it is really exciting.
yeah,
thank you.
yeah. And really,
Yeah, so thank you guys so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you.
If you want to learn more about today's topic, you can find information about our sources that we use for the episode on our website, SpookyScienceSisters.com. Tune in next time for our holiday special. If you liked this episode, hit subscribe and share with your friend. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at SpookySciPod, Facebook at Spooky Science Sisters, and at our website at SpookyScienceSisters.com. If you have any questions about previous topics or ideas for future episodes, email us at SpookyScienceSisters@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening. Stay spooky.
Have you ever wondered if we could live on Mars? Or how you can stop your champagne going flat? Or even What hurts more, getting kicked in the balls or having a baby? Well, me too. This is how I Read It Online Summer came about. Each week, I'm joined by Ross.
Hi.
And Andrew.
Hi.
Who are both science teachers, where we answer your everyday science questions, no matter how strange. You can listen to us every Monday from wherever you get your podcast from, and follow us on our social media channels at iRedditOS.
This podcast is a part of Straight Up Strange Productions. Discover more shows like this one at straightupstrange.com.